And yeah, so we'll keep it pretty basic today, just putting data on a spreadsheet, applying some styling and like just getting to functions and making some quick, easy graphs, just all the basic things, just a few examples of each. And we'll make like a budget table as we go, just as the example today. If you have any questions, feel free to chime in as we go. If you want to see something shown again, if you have like a tangential question, feel free. But if you don't have any questions, you can mute if you want, just so we can keep the video quiet. Let me just get my last couple things set up. So if you want to follow along and you have OneDrive all set up, you can just go into OneDrive, the equivalent of Google Drive. You can click on the three dots, which basically lets you choose which application you want to use. Just go to Excel. And then you can, on this page, you can find a template that you want to use. If you have any existing files, you can open it from this page. So if you used the sheet today and you want to get back to it, this is how you would find the sheet that you make today. But you can also just make a new blank book by clicking on this button within the Excel page. I'm not going to click that because I already have a blank page. So we'll do that. And yeah, we'll get going. So any questions, chime up anytime you want, but we'll just go slow and steady all the way from the basics to, like I said, functions and a little bit on graphs at the end. Okay. So what is Excel? Just in case anyone hasn't really used it at all. So it's a spreadsheet application to kind of input data, organize it. You can do calculations and data analysis. You can do that all automatically, automatic calculations. You can do any type of data. You can fill this with like text if you keep track of books. You can keep track of quantities, sales and budget amounts and anything like that. You can even do dates and times and do math with those. You can do a lot with Excel. So this is the web edition of Excel. Most of the things you'll see today, you can use in any edition of Excel. If you have like the 2016 Excel, if you have the new Excel. The only thing that might change is like the location of like the buttons and how to do it themselves, but it'll be mostly compatible with any Excel that you use. And all the things that we talk about today will also be applicable to like things like Google Sheets, which is the Google equivalent of Excel. But again, that will have its own buttons and setup that Google use, but it's an equivalently useful spreadsheet tool, Google Sheets, which is also free and also comes, if you have a Gmail, you have access to use Google Sheets. So we got a spreadsheet program. What we have is an Excel file. And we'll take a look at like what this window, all that's in kind of the window when you open up Excel. So this is one Excel file, and it's also called a Excel book. And in addition to one file, one book, you can have multiple sheets open. If you imagine like a physical spreadsheet book, like a notepad. If you look at the bottom of the page, you can kind of flip pages if you want to keep data on one page and keep a separate set of data on page 2 and page 3. You can do that if you want. And we can just add new sheets with a plus sign, and we can toggle the sheets just by clicking the button of the name. But within any spreadsheet, it goes on and on and on. So we don't need to be limited into what we can just fit onto one sheet. If we go down, it just keeps going like all the way to 1 million cells. And if we keep going this way, this also extends, pretty much as wide as we can walk. So we don't have any limitations to the Excel spreadsheet itself. Taking a look at the Excel window, kind of top to bottom, all the way on the top, the green line, we can see again the like Microsoft buttons, and this is kind of to leave Excel if we want to kind of leave this file. We can jump to email, we can jump to OneDrive, all those things. So we won't use those today. Up on the top left, if you click on this, it might say like new blank book. If you opened up one, you can change the file name if you want. You can just edit that. Something to note as we go on, with the web edition of Excel, it automatically saves what you do. Anytime you make an edit, it kind of quickly saves it. So we don't need to manually save. And if we happen to, have the laptop die, it'll basically have everything saved up until the last second, last 2 seconds. So that's a pretty safe feature that they have built in. This box up at the top, we might use it in what this box is as we get into like applying styles and seeing all these buttons in what's called this ribbon, this top section just below the green line. We can see all these buttons. We can make things bold. We can copy and paste. We can do things, and we'll take a look at this in depth in a minute, but we can like add graphs and things like that. So this ribbon is all the kind of tools that you can have. But what this top box is we can type in kind of the name of any tool that we want, and it kind of finds it immediately, and we can use this button instead. So if you're new to Excel and we teach you how to do something in Excel, but you can't quite find it in this, you can always just type it into the top, and it can find anything that you can do in Excel, and you can just click the button from that. So that's what that top tool is. It's kind of a find help tool that you might find useful. Taking a look left to right, again, this is kind of the ribbon of all the options and tools that we have. If we look at the file button, we have a couple options on this pop-up window. We can make a new page from this window. We can make a new sheet. We can use the open button to open an existing file that we have. And we can also see all the most recent files that I've used in Excel kind of get listed chronologically. So if you want to open a second Excel file, you can find it in this quick list. These couple options, like we said, Excel saves automatically, so we don't need to save. But if you want to make a duplicate of a file to kind of have like a backup, you can use the save as option. That'll make a second copy of it. And since this is a online edition of Excel, this is Excel as a website, all the files that we make and save onto this will be kind of saved to the website, to Microsoft OneDrive, which is a cloud. That's what a cloud is. You kind of save it on the internet. But if you want to download a local copy of the file so you can maybe email it to someone or just have it locally, this is how you can download a copy in the Save As tab. This is how we can print things. If we look at this option, share with people, what we can do with this option is, since this Excel is based on the web and we keep the files on the web, we can kind of collaborate live with people. So I don't have to send people like a downloaded copy of my file. I can send people access to my actual file. And then when they open that file, they'll be editing my copy. So when it comes to like business teams and having groups edit the same file, you can do that with the web edition of Excel. So we can just type in someone's email and we'll send them access to my file. We can let them have edit capabilities so they can edit my file, including deleting everything. So we want to only send it to people that we know that should be in my file. But we can also change it to view only. So if I want someone to see my data, but I don't want them to make any changes, I can send them a view only copy. So they can see my file as I edit it, but they can't make any edits themselves. So we kind of have these two options to give people access to the file. And if we take a look and see this guest button, what's happening is this is kind of what it looks like when you have the live collab functionality going on. This is my copy of the file, and I can make edits. But at the same time, you can see someone's clicking around in my file, also in it at the same time. And they can also edit it at the same time. So it's a good team tool that you can use if that's what you need. And then, yeah, that's most of the main things in the file tab. Next, if we look back at the ribbon, one of the main things we'll look at today is what's called the home ribbon. And what this does is a lot of like the text styling things that we know when we begin to make tables and we have like headings and things like that. We might want to kind of make things stand out. So we might want to make the table headings bold. We might want to italicize things, kind of change the way it looks. So the home ribbon has a lot to do with kind of styling the visuals of the table. And we'll spend a bit of time in that today. Just going down the line, if we jump to the second tab by clicking at that up at the top. This has a couple advanced things, but one thing we'll look at the end of today is once we have some data on this sheet, we can just select that data and just click a button and we can make any type of graph that we want. So when it comes to visualizing the data, we can just quickly push one of these buttons and we'll see that at the end of the class. This one, we'll skip that one. This one has to do with like layout when you print. We won't take a look at that. This one we won't use today, but I'll just mention this is all the kind of functions that you can use in Excel. Today we'll be looking at simple things like how to sum things and take the average and things like that. But once you get into like advanced Excel, you have a whole bunch of kind of built-in functions that Excel made and you can use. And this is kind of all of them listed on this tab. On the data tab, again, a lot of advanced things that we won't look at today. But one thing that's useful, even at the beginning level, is these buttons in the middle. These help us, once we have a table, kind of switch how we view the table. So we can alphabetize the table automatically. We can do it, high to low, quantity-wise, low to high, anything we want. So that's what that can do. Next class, we might, in the Excel 102 class, we might take a look at like checking to see if we have duplicates and data validation, kind of these advanced tools if we have a whole bunch of data in the sheet, but today we won't need those. If we jump to the review button, the main thing is these comments. And what we can do with these comments, if we click new comment, we could see what pops up. We can say, leave a little message. And it kind of goes away. So what the comment is obviously when we want to make a spreadsheet, we'll actually put some data on the table. But if we want to kind of leave like a side note, like kind of like a sticky note on the file, that's not in the way of the data itself, we can leave what's called a comment. And like I explained a couple of minutes ago, you can have this file be accessible by multiple people. So this is kind of how you can leave comments to different people on the team, and you can talk in kind of a side chat that's not in the way of the data itself. But if you just use this alone, you probably won't need to leave comments like that. But that's what that functionality is. And then finally, zoom. This has to do with like styling the sheet. We can kind of toggle on and off the grid lines if we want. We're going to just kind of change the look of the page. We'll take a look at a couple of these things. We can zoom if the page is too small and you want to kind of bump up the size of it. We have the zoom option, but I'll also mention if we take a look at the bottom side, the bottom right-hand side, we also have some zoom buttons down this way. So if we click zoom, it's kind of bump up the size of the spreadsheet. So I'll leave that a little bit bumped up so we can see it easily. So we have two places that we can use the zoom button. And that leads into one point. In this class, we'll be taking a look at a lot of basic tools, but we'll also see a couple ways to do each of those tools. And in Excel, you almost always have 2 to 3 ways that you can do the same exact thing. I'll demo a couple ways each, but you only have to use one way, the way that makes the most sense to you. And I just want to mention that now. Okay, so we'll go back to the home tab. And now let's finally get into kind of the spreadsheet itself and get ready to begin to put data on, style the table and things like that. So the spreadsheet itself is this white box in the middle. Each cell, each of these boxes is called a cell. And this is the place that we put data in. We set up a table. A cell is kind of made, it's kind of the conjunction of 2 points. It's the intersection of these rows labeled alphabetically, A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. And then because you can have as many data points as you want, once you get to Z, you go to AA, AB, all the way to ZZ. And then you go to AAA to triple Z. So like I said, you have a lot of data that you can put on this. But that's how we call rows in Excel. We label them alphabetically. So this is row A, this is C, this is E. On the opposite hand, columns, excuse me, that's columns. Rows we label 1, 2, 3, all the way down to a million plus, I believe. So we have a lot of options both ways. And the way that we call a cell in Excel is kind of name is the intersection point of its column in row. So this cell up in the top left, it's in column A and it's in row 1. So if we take a look at this box kind of up at the top left, that's kind of the name of this cell. That's what we call it. So this is A1. This is going to be B1. This is C1, A1, A2, A3. And any cell that we go to, if we zoom across the page, we can always check its name 2 ways. We can just see which column and which row is highlighted. So this is AU27. And we can also just check its identity in the name box. So this is AU27. We won't need to really pay attention to like the name of the cell until we get to functions. Until then, we'll just be, talking about the value in the cell, what we actually put into the cell. And today we'll be making a budget table. So that's the basics of kind of the layout of the spreadsheet. And now let's just get into, how we put data into the sheet. So to type in a cell, all we have to do is use the mouse and just click on which cell that we want to type into. So if I want to begin a new table up in the top left, I just click on it once and then I can type like that. I can just click to go to my next cell and I can begin to, set up my table. So we can kind of click to move around, but we also have a couple different ways to move around. So instead of using the mouse, if I only want to type, I can, type in my value, and then I can click the tab key, and that'll help me move across. So I can keep my hands on the keypad, so I can tab to go right. And then if I want to go left, I can hold down Shift and click tab to go left. So Shift tab is left, and then just tab is right like this. So what I can do is, yeah.
Can I ask a question? What is that purple thing under February?
Oh yeah, so this is just a little flag. It's that comment that I put in. Yeah, so that just means I have a comment. If I delete that, that goes away. But that's just a little flag saying I had a comment in that cell.
So to delete that, you highlighted and right click, then that option came up, right? To delete it?
Yeah, just like that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And initially, when you were showing the file, you said you typed in hi, hello in different cells. And then you said it is like collaboration, like collab. But collab is a thing in Google, right? But we are doing this in OneDrive, which is a Microsoft thing. So
yeah, I didn't mean Google Colab. I was just abbreviating collaboration.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we can just have live editing with multiple people on the same document. Yeah. So if I go, so yeah, you can see someone else is now in my document and it just shows me someone else is in it and we can see them as they put data onto the page.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Out of the way. So yeah, we can click around to move around the spreadsheet. We can click tab and then Shift tab to move left. And we can also use the arrow keys on the keypads. I can click right, I can click down, click left, click up. So at this level, you might just use the mouse to kind of click around. But if you need to input a whole bunch of data into the spreadsheet, it might be easiest if you use the tab key, because then you can just keep hands on the keypad and not go type something in, grab the mouse, type something in, grab the mouse. So that's just kind of like a convenience tip, all the different ways that you can move around the cell. You can see we just click to type, but if I want to edit a cell that has like existing data in it, we kind of have two ways to do it. If I just click on a cell once, and then I just type, something else, what it does is it deletes the existing value and just replaces it with the new thing I type. But if I want to kind of add on or edit what's in the cell right now, I have to double left click with the mouse. And then you can see I kind of get the little typing line, and I can edit this as I want. So if we want to delete this, we just type and it deletes what's in it. But if we want to edit it, we double click and then we get access to what was in it, and we can change it how we want like that. So we just need to keep that in mind. Double click to edit, single click to kind of delete and replace it with something else. And then finally, once we just want to delete something completely, we just click on that cell and click the backspace button. And we can also click the delete button if we want. So backspace, delete, they do the same thing at this point. And I'll also mention at this point, as you begin to do things, if you mess up or you want to practice, you can always do something. And then in the home ribbon, you have access to the undo and redo buttons. So you can do something and then quickly undo it automatically if you want. Okay. And then lastly, in addition to double clicking to edit, we can also see that in addition to kind of the cell name, this is C1, we also get a second box with the value of that cell. So instead of editing it in the cell itself, I can kind of edit it in this top box if I want, like this. And that's going to be useful when we type out kind of long-winded functions and we have a lot to type. That's kind of, it's called the function box, I think. And it just gives us some extra space to edit the same thing. So if you're following along, you can go ahead, and I'm going to set up a budget table. So I'm going to have a couple months, and then I'm going to have a couple things like rent and utilities and things like that. So I'm just going to put these guys in, and then I'm going to need my budget categories. So I'm going to do like rent. And in this case, when I want to go down, if I click tab, I go right, and then shift tab goes left. If I want to go down and up, I can click the enter key and that goes down. And then if I click shift and enter key, that goes back up. So tab and shift tab is left and right. Enter and shift enter is up and down like that. So this is how I can just keep my hands on the keypad. So it's going to fill in my table, utilities, enter to go to the cell beneath it. It's going to fill in a couple things, my phone bill, my vehicle bill, and just a couple of things like that. And now we have a basic table set up. And now we can see this might happen to you as you set up something in Excel. You begin to do something and you kind of almost immediately realize that you messed up. We can notice that I need to shift this to the right, because right now I kind of have the table colliding. I can't have any January data because I have all the headings beneath it. So let's talk about like copying and pasting and moving things that way, because that's a really useful skill in Excel. You'd be surprised how often you'll use cut and paste and copy and paste, especially at this point when you set up a sheet. So to make a selection, we don't want to type something into a cell. We kind of want to select some existing data. So what we can do to select like this, so that we can then copy and paste it, all you have to do is kind of left click and hold the click down. And then you can just drag the mouse to kind of choose what you want. In this case, I just want these guys, but I could click and hold down and get a row. I could click and pull down and get a column. And I could get like a whole table if I wanted to copy and paste it by clicking down and then kind of pulling my mouse this way. The second way to do it is I can hold down Shift, and then I can just use the arrow keys to move as I want like that. Again, if I don't want to use the mouse, but I want to use my keypad exclusively. Now to copy and paste this, what we can do is we have a couple ways to copy and paste, and we'll take a look at each of these and you can see which one is, makes the most sense to you. The most visible way right now is up in the Home tab. We actually have a whole box that's just copy and paste things. And just in case you don't know, I'll explain what copy is and what cut is. So to copy it, we can just click the copy button. We can see we get these kind of squiggly lines. That means it's been copied. And now all we have to do is we can find a new place to do the paste. We can still see that I have it copied. And I just need to paste it so it kind of goes in this spot. So I'm just going to click this spot. And then I can come back up to the paste button and paste it like that. And we can see what the copy button does. I'll do it in an especially visible way. If I copy and say paste this way, it does exactly what it says. It makes a duplicate. So it's not deleting the old data, it's copying it like that. So instead of that, I actually want to cut my data. So I'm going to use the cut tool. I'm going to begin in B1 and kind of extend this way. So now I can paste like this. And now we can see I cut out my data and I put it in a new place. And the place that it used to be is now blank. So that's how I can do copy and paste one way. We have a couple ways to do copy and paste, and I'll just show you those two separate ways. To begin, always just select what you want. And then we can, instead of using these buttons, we can do a right click on the mouse. And then again, because it's so commonly used, it's the top two tools in the right click dialog box. So I'm going to cut using the right click box, find the new place that I want to begin the paste, and then again, right click. And then we have my paste options, and I'm just going to choose the paste like that. So we can also use the right click, and that's probably, these ones will be less useful than the right click, I think. But the most useful and the quickest way to do a copy and paste, and this applies to kind of anytime you use a machine, not just on Excel, anytime you use a PC, is we can use some keypad shortcuts. So I can highlight what I want, and then I'm going to click and hold the control button down in the bottom left and click X. And that's the key combination that means I want to cut this. So control, hold, and click X. I'm going to click on the new cell that I want to paste it in. And then I'm going to click and hold on control again. And this time I'm going to click V. So that's the most useful way to do a control copy paste. So again, we can just control X and then control V like that. And if you want to copy, we can do control C as in copy, and then control V again to paste a copy like that. So control X, control C, and control V to paste. Let's do this one last time to actually do it. Okay, yeah, so now we can change the table and not have to redo the whole thing. We can just take any data and move it any way we want. And we'll see a couple ways that we'll need to do this as we go down this budget. See, we might need to kind of maybe put new columns in between data if we left out some data. So we'll see a whole bunch of ways to kind of edit this spreadsheet and not have to do the whole thing again if we messed up. Because it's not pen on a notepad, we can change this as we want without redoing the whole thing. Any questions about anything we've done yet? Feel free to speak up if you want to see anything again or anything like that. But if not, what we can do now is, now that we have my headings, we don't have my data yet. We don't have like the money amounts that I want. But what we might want to do when we set up a table is lay out the headings, and then we might want to apply some style to these headings. Usually when you have an Excel table, you'll want to style the headings so that they kind of stand out visually. Nothing too drastic, but just, some visual emphasis. And then usually we'll leave the data itself just plain black text on white. But with these guys, we'll want to just apply something so they kind of stand out. So this is when we use these home buttons to kind of make things bold and give it a background and things like that. To apply changes to a cell, we just select the cell. So we just click, I'm going to apply some changes to month 1, and I'm going to do some styling. So we can jump up. If you're not on it, just click on the home button. And then this is just like Microsoft, just like any text editing thing. We can just click on some buttons. Maybe I want to make it bold. Maybe I'll want to change the font. So I can Arial black if I want. I might want to change like the font size maybe, just to make it stand out. So I'll jump up the font size. I might want to put a little bit of a background on this. So I can use the little paint fill tool. I usually choose like a light green like this. And then lastly, what I might want to do is these faint grid lines that we see. They might look good enough now, but the thing with them is these grid lines don't print out if you need to print something out. So we need to put like actual lines on the page if we want to see an actual table with lines when we print if we need to. So to do that, we get this little like grid tool. Click on this little right-hand drop-down button. And then, I want boxes on all sides, lines on all sides, so I can click on that. And now we can see I got some nice black lines surrounding it to kind of differentiate it. Okay. So we applied a whole bunch of things. That stands out nicely, but we can see as I edited it, I changed the font size, I changed the font, which kind of made it kind of extend past the cell. So it's kind of getting cut off. So now we kind of need to adjust this column width so we can fit it in like that. So a couple ways to do this, and we'll see a couple ways as we go down. But we might want to begin with on the home tab. If we go to, let's see, if we go to the cells button and then we click on this one, format, we can see we have a couple options. And the one we'll want is we want to auto fit column width. And that's going to automatically make the column as wide as it needs to be based on the text in it. So if I click on that, you can see that it added ½ inch to it, so we can see all the text visible. So if I do that again, we can see it's cut off. Just click on auto fit column width, and then it's going to put it with enough size in it. And then the last thing I might want to do, just some style stuff again. Maybe I want to align it in the middle so it's all nice and neat like that. Anything that you want to do like that. Next, obviously we need to kind of apply these same changes all the way down. So we'll see a couple ways to apply changes en masse and maybe even copy and paste changes. So one way that we can kind of guess to do it now is maybe instead of just selecting one, we can select, maybe multiple cells. And then as we apply changes, it applies to all of them at once. So we could do it this way if we want to. One thing we'll see is we can't really select just the headings. If we kind of click and drag, we kind of select the whole table, but I don't want the inside of the table to have these heading styles, just the outside. So one trick that we can do is select this. And then if I click and hold down the control button, I can kind of make a separate selection to the side. And I can do that any place I want. So if I hold down the control button, I can kind of select any group of cells that I want. And then any changes that I click on will apply to all of them at once. So one way that I can manage this is just use the control button to just select what I want. I don't want that one. And then I can apply my changes. So we could do it that way, and it might be a good practice to just go down the line and use all the home buttons. But the easiest way is actually going to, again, be the copy and paste tool. So if we look at this, this has all the styles that we want applied to it. We obviously don't want this text, but we want, the green background, the bold, the increased font size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this cell. You can click Control C. You can click the copy button. Again, you can use the right click if you want to copy it. And then what I want to do is I'm going to select the cells that I want to paste just the style onto, not the text itself. And I can use the Control button to kind of select multiple groups. And then this time, instead of pasting, because if I paste, I'll just get an exact copy, I need to use a special type of paste. So instead of clicking on the paste button, I'm going to use the little drop down beneath it, that little arrow. And we can see I have a whole bunch of paste options. So copy and paste in Excel is you have a lot of options with it. So the typical paste just pastes what you copy. But what we can also do is this one down this way, paste formatting, and it has a little paintbrush next to it. If I click on this, you can see that what it did is it kept my text as I had it, but it just copied the kind of paint stylings that I gave it, the bold, the background, things like that. So I can use that option to kind of have an existing cell with a style that I want and apply it to a bunch of things again without having to redo all those styles by clicking on all these home buttons up at the top. The one thing that it didn't didn't copy and paste was kind of the column width. So we can see on this side, it increased all the font size, but I'll have to come back and do one last step to fit these in the cells. One thing that I can do is I can kind of highlight them if I want and do the same thing that I did last time. I can click on it on cells, click on this and maybe auto fit column width, and that'll kind of automatically find the width of all of them. So we can do that way. That seems good enough. And then one last thing we'll take a look at is we can see that we changed the font in the headings and say that I want the same font family in the body of the table. Maybe not the bold and the size, but I want the same font family. I could just select my 2B data cells if I want and apply my font like that. But what I could also do is to select a whole spreadsheet, all the way to infinity, left and right, up and down. We can kind of click on this top left little triangle button in between the A and the 1. And we can see that basically selects the whole spreadsheet, even beyond what we can see. So if we want to do a change, like change the font size or maybe change the font, this could be a good way that we can apply to everything that we could use on the spreadsheet at once. So we can see if I click this, it applies this green background all the way down as deep as I could go. But in this case, maybe I'll just change the font family. Maybe I'll pick that one. And now we can see I have the same font family, even in these blank cells that have nothing in them, minus the bold and all those things, but good enough at this point. And then the last thing we'll do when we set up this table is we just want to add these grid lines back, not the faint grid lines that don't show up when we print, but like these actual black ones that will show up when we print if we need to. So I'm just going to click and drag to select all the cells that I'll think I will fit. And then I can just use this box below the font size to kind of choose which lines I want to apply. You can choose just put a line on the top or just put a line on the side. But the most frequently used button is kind of lines on all sides. This is the one that you'll use 9 out of 10 times. So if we click on that, now we got a nice visible table with the lines all set up like that. And then finally, one thing we'll look at is we looked a little bit at automatically fitting these the text in the cells. And we did that with these tools like this. But what we might run into is if we use the column fit on multiple things, let me just do that. what we can see is it automatically fits to that individual piece of data. You know, this month is not as long spelled out. So I have an unevenly sized table. This one looks like the biggest box. This one's pretty skinny. This one's in the middle. So I don't really want that. I want a nice even table. So how can we make these all the same size? Well, to do that, we can actually select the column itself. So we click on the B, if we click on the C, we see when we put the mouse on the right-hand side of that column, we get a new little icon. And this icon lets us adjust the width of the column. So that's how we can adjust a column. But how do we adjust kind of all of them at once to make them match and kind of be equal like that? Well, what we can do, instead of kind of doing one by one, is just trying to match it up. What we can do is click with the left click and hold it down, and then drag the mouse to select multiple columns at once. So we can click and hold and select as many as we want. And then once we do that, we just put the mouse up. We can choose any of these little spots that we get the resize tool, anyone that we want. And then we just adjust it the way that we want. And then we'll see, since we have multiple selected, when we adjust one column, they all come out to be the same width. So I can choose this and then have them all be the same width. So I'm going to push this down a little bit. So I can basically fit my longest month, just like that. And now I have a nice table like that. And again, a lot of this is just kind of not even getting into the data, not getting to the functions. But the thing that you do in the beginning of most spreadsheets is just put a little visualization on the page to make it easy to read and things like that. Okay, so we have the table all set up. One last thing I want to look at ahead of beginning to fill this in and then getting onto functions is actually going back to copy and paste again. We saw one kind of advanced paste when you paste the kind of style applied to something, but I just want to show you all the copy and paste options that we have in case they become useful to you. So just as an example, I'm going to Control C the whole table. I'm going to copy the whole table, and then I'm just going to choose a new cell next to it. And then I just want to show you which each of the paste tools does. So just typical paste, it basically puts an exact duplicate onto the page. So that one's pretty easy. Instead, we'll skip this one because we don't know about functions yet. This one is kind of the opposite of the paste styling one that we just did. If I do this one, it's going to just paste the value. So it's going to strip away all the paint and the bold and the font and things like that, and just put them into the new places as just kind of plain values. And it's going to keep the default styling applied to the place that I pasted. So let me show you what I mean. So if instead of a blank thing, I have, maybe something like I have blue and I have white text and I have this in this spot, and maybe I'll make it italic. If I now copy and paste, or just paste values, we can see that it keeps the default values in that spot. So that's kind of the opposite of copying like this, choosing a spot, and then pasting formatting like this. So this just pastes the style, but keeping the values in. So if I change this to be like that, and then I copy this, I'll do it the separate way. Now if I paste this, we can see I kept the ABC, but I copied the same style. So we kind of have paste values and paste style options like that. And then one last useful tool. Let me just clean this up a little bit. One last copy and paste tool that we have available to us is I can copy it. And then we have this transpose tool. And what this does is I can paste it. And what it's done is it's flipped the X and Y axis. So if at some point you make a table and you want to switch what goes down and what goes across, or maybe someone gives you an Excel spreadsheet and you want to change how they made it, you can easily just copy something and kind of flip it like that. And that's using paste transpose. So copy and paste is really useful. I don't think a lot of people know about all the special paste options, but it's really useful to help you be, quite good at Excel. Okay, so we can get rid of this little demo. If I want to delete something, I said that if we just use backspace, it deletes the cell, but it actually just deletes the value. We can see it's still green background. And we could see if I try to select multiple things and then click backspace, it doesn't actually delete all of them. It just kind of deletes the top one in that selection. So two things to note. One thing is if you select multiple things like this, instead of clicking backspace, this is when you would click delete. This can delete multiple things at once. Backspace is just going to do the initial thing in that selection. So we can select and then delete. And then to get rid of all this styling, the lines and the green background, what we can do is go up to the editing tool in the home tab. And then we got this kind of erase tool. And we can see the contents one, that's basically what we just did with delete. But this one and all is going to wipe away all that paint and all those lines like that. So we can use the erase tool to kind of delete that styling like that. Okay. Okay, now that we have a bit of a table set up, we'll just see, we have the table set up, but maybe we want to add some new columns to this. Maybe we want to continue the months to get all of 2022. Maybe we want to add something into this, like dining out, something like that. So let's take a look at what's called the autofill tool. So if I want to type out all the months, I can do that, but it would take a while. And we can see I have to go back and I can copy and paste the style onto all of them. That's still a couple steps. But let me show you the autofill tool. So if I select these months, and then I'll show you what autofill does. This is what autofill can do. It can kind of intelligently fill in the rest based on some trend. Excel basically knows this is the name of the month, and it probably knows I want all 12 months. So if I apply autofill, I can go all the way until the last month, and then it repeats again, but that's okay. How to use autofill. We want to select some example, something that we want to extend and use autofill on. And then we can see when we make a selection, we have a little box down in the bottom right. We only have that box in the bottom right. And we can see when I put my mouse on top of it, we get this new little mouse icon. And that's the autofill handle, the autofill button. And when I click on that and drag it out, then I can use autofill to extend my months like that. But that only is successful when you have something easy like that, something that can be extended by Excel's intelligence. If I try to, maybe click on this and grab the autofill tool, and maybe I extend it down this way, we can see what I've done instead is Excel doesn't know what kind of follows this. This is not a common list like the months or the days of the week. So it can't autofill that. So what it does instead is it just basically copies and pastes it. So autofill is something useful we can do with things that make sense in a sequence. So I can extend this to get a couple months. Maybe I want to go all the way to the end, but I'll just keep it like this so we can keep it on one page. And let's take a couple of looks at what else autofill can do. So if I go to a new spot, you can see if I have something like 1, 2, and I select both of those, when I autofill, Excel can automatically see, oh, he's adding up, he's counting up one by one. So if I want to do a schedule and I'm doing the days of the week, instead of manually typing out all the days of the week, I can just use autofill to do it like this. So that's one application of autofill. Like we saw, we can do the months. We can also do days of the week. Again, if you want to do a schedule, I just give Excel the trend. So usually you want to use two values. So I tell Excel, okay, Sunday, Monday, and then Excel can see, oh, he's probably going Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way up to the end of the week. And then he'll loop back again like that. So we can do that with days of the week. We can even, I think, do it with like abbreviated days of the week. So if I click on these, use the autofill tool and pull that down, I get the same thing, just abbreviated. So it knows what that means too. If I do something, again, like I'm setting up a schedule, I could do something, oops. I could tell Excel, okay, I'm doing a little timetable, and it can kind of guess at the math that I'm doing. So it's going to jump up by little blocks like that. And when it gets to noon, it's going to wrap around up to AM to PM like that. So you can do a lot with autofill. You can even, if instead of going up 1, 2, 3, if you want to jump up by like tens, Excel can do that. You can jump up by anything. You just have to set the trend in 2 cells, and then Excel will go from that point on. One thing Excel can't do, it can't do like A, B, C, and it can't do a lot with text. You can see in this case, it kind of just copy pasted A, B, A, B, A, B all the way down. So some things it can't do it with, but you kind of have to do something to do with math, counting up, something with something really obvious like days of the week or months like that. But one last cool thing that we can do is say you want to set up like a sales spreadsheet, and you want to keep track of clients, and each client has like a client ID like this, and you might have 1,000 clients. Obviously, you don't want to type those all out. So even though this has text in it, client, we do some math. So we have 1, 2. So if we try this, we can see Excel is actually capable of doing this one, because it can do the math on the end of it, and it just keeps client the same. So you can do a whole bunch with the autofill tool. It's just the beginning of Excel's kind of like automation tools, kind of guessing what you want to do and helping you with a lot of convenience tools. But I just want to mention all those because it's really helpful setting up tables and not typing out so many things manually like that. Any questions about that one? That one's quite, it's not difficult to use, but it's quite interesting, I know. Okay, so if not, we'll go back to this, and we can see we autofilled this way. We couldn't autofill with these because this is not something like a known sequence. But say I want to add something new into this side. I could do it a couple ways, and this is just depending on the situation. I could, if I want, just copy and paste it, and then just edit it to be something else if I want. I could, if I want, use the fill handle, the autofill handle, and that'll again just basically copy and paste it, and then I can edit it. If I want to, so I can do that. Let me do that real quick. And then say I want to edit this, and I'll add like a dining out category like that. But let's say instead of adding to the bottom, let's say I want to put something into the middle of my table. We can see I can easily add stuff onto both ends. But how do I kind of mess with the middle of my table? Well, we can add new rows and columns to the table. So if I want to add something into the middle, what I can do is if I want to add a new row, I can choose the row beneath the kind of gap that I want to add. And then if I click on the row itself, like the 6, and then I choose right click, I can now add a new one with one of these options, kind of below the cut, copy, paste. I can add in a blank one. And it's quite convenient because it automatically copies the style of the one beneath it. So if I click on 7 and then add in a new one, it automatically is going to make this bold with all the green in the background, stuff like that. I can do the same top to bottom. So if I missed a month, this time it's just going to be columns, but same idea like that. And then one last convenience tool, we just saw that maybe I want to add a couple. Instead of doing it one by one, say I want to add 2 at a time, or up to 10, up to 1,000, as many as you want. What you can do is I'm going to pick the spot that I want to put something above it. But if I want to add maybe 2, maybe 3 new rows, what I can do is just click and hold and drag down. And now I have a couple selected. But what I can do is the same thing. Just put in a row with the right click option. And now we can see it adds in as many rows as I had highlighted. And I'll show that again with the column. So if I want to add in, 5, I can highlight 5. I'll click on F because I want to add to the left of it. And I can put in some columns. So we can see it added 5 columns, and it kind of copy pasted the style of this box, the green background, the font, the bold, all that kind of stuff. So all these tools just kind of help you save time. It's easy enough to use Excel, even if you don't know all these tricks, but it does help you a lot, with confidence and, doing things quickly if you know all these quick little tips. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to add one back in, dining out. Actually, I have that at the bottom. So let me add in savings. And then I just have one last thing to do. I can select these blank boxes, but I want to autofill this way. And that's going to kind of copy paste the grid line that I applied. So we can do all these things to avoid coming back up to the top and reapplying all these styles and things like that. So a lot of convenience tips when it comes to setting up the table, adjusting the table, putting stuff back in. So now we'll get into actually putting some data into the table. Unless we have any questions, as always, feel free to speak up if you have any questions. I'm just going to take these away so the table isn't as big to deal with. I'll take these away as well. Take that away. Okay, so now we just want to put some data into the table. So rent, that's going to be consistent month to month. So I could just type in 2000, and I could use tab to easily jump to the right like that. But again, instead of that, I can just type in 2000 once, autofill it this way. Since I only have one 2000, Excel is not going to autofill and go like 2000, 3000 because I haven't set a trend yet. If I did something like this, and then I pull autofill, then it would change it. But if I just select one, it's basically going to copy and paste it when I pull it that way. So I can do that way. And now right at the beginning, we can see we might want to adjust the look of the data itself. This is obviously money that we've been speaking of. So we might want to kind of make this, accounting or money type data. So what we can do and what you should do in Excel when you have data, if we jump up to the home ribbon, in this box in the middle, we could choose what type of data this is. We have a couple quick options on the bottom, but if we click on this box, we can see that we can make data a date type. We can make it a percentage. We can say this is explicitly text. In this case, we want to make it money type data. We kind of have two options to do that. Both of them do basically the same thing, just a slight visual difference. I can just choose accounting. And then we can see that it kind of put in some decimals. I might not want those in this simple budget table. It's just taking up space and kind of making it confusing on the eye. So what I can do is we have like increase and decrease decimal buttons. So if I click on this, it's kind of gonna chop off those decimal points. I'll just mention now, even though that we won't put any cents into this, if I do something like say rent was $2,000.50, if I do this, it's going to round it up but it's still going to be 2005. So this 2001 is just a visual 2001. If we do any math with this, any functions, it's still going to use the 2000.5. So it's fine if we want to take away the decimals to kind of abbreviate it visually. But we'll just keep this 2000. We'll take away the decimals, and I'm just going to autofill again so that we can apply the accounting and the decimal settings to the whole table this way. I'm just going to fill in some sample data now. It's going to be completely made up. It won't make sense. But we'll just say, this is 150. This is 175 this month. This was 180. We didn't get to this month yet, so we'll leave that blank. We'll just put in a couple rows of sample data. I'll actually cut out some of these just so we don't have so much stuff on the page. So we'll just do these couple things. And then we'll say my phone bill is, that's also going to be consistent month to month. So I can just pull that way. And then again, I just want to apply the accounting style to it. So I can just select all if I want. Come back up, choose accounting, and just adjust the decimals again like that. So that's pretty easy to do. This will be useful to change what type of data you use. When it comes to money, you'll use these ones. If you use text, you might use the text, you might use general. And you even have additional ones beyond this. Like say I want to keep a list of contacts in a spreadsheet and say they all have phone numbers. So I'll say this phone is 973-376-1006. Right now, Excel doesn't know what this is, but if I go to my options of what type of data is, and I go to the additional options, I can actually tell Excel, if I go to special and choose phone, we can see that Excel is kind of automatically going to kind of put the parentheses and the hyphen, but the data itself is still just going to be the phone without the hyphen and stuff like that. So you'll want to use this button and this kind of type setting to change the visual of it on the page. We don't want to, when we type in phones, actually type in the parentheses and the hyphen, because that might mess up the data. When we type in money, we don't want to actually put in the money symbol and maybe commas and things like that. We'll just type in the data itself, and then we can use this to kind of change what it looks like in its units and things like that. Any questions about this? This has a lot of applications, and we could do a whole class on the different types of things. But if you have any questions about that, do let me know now. Okay, so now we have the data. Looks pretty good. So now we'll get into the last bit of the class, which is using some basic functions. Obviously in Excel, if we want to do something like a total and maybe like an average column, we want to add these up manually. We use an Excel function so that we can both automatically calculate it, and if we come back and change the data at any point, that function, which is maybe getting the total, maybe getting the average, that will automatically change anytime the data that it's dependent on also changes. So we'll take a look at what that means. But let's talk about functions and how we go about setting them up now. So anytime we want to do a function, really anytime we want to do even something less than a function, if we just want to reference a different cell in, let's say, cell H2, we always begin the value in that cell with an equal sign. If we don't put an equal sign, anything we type in this box just goes into the cell as that value. But as soon as we put an equal sign, Excel is going to know something is being calculated, something is being found, stuff like that. So if I want to say, maybe say the value of H2 is going to match this 2000, I can just say equals, and then I can just click on this cell and we can see what happens. It automatically puts in that cell name, B2. And this is when it becomes useful that cells not only have values, but the kind of cell itself has a name that we can reference. So this cell H2 is going to be equal to B2. So I can put that in, and then I can just enter the value like that. And now we can see they match because H2 is going to be equal to B2. That's kind of the most simple way to set up, not even a function, but some cell that's dependent on something else. And we can also see if I come back and change this, maybe I got to discount month 1, we can see this automatically changed too. So anytime a cell that's dependent on something else, anytime what is dependent on changes, it will also change like that. So as I change this, this immediately changes. And when you begin to build complicated Excel spreadsheets with lots of functions and maybe calculations based on the raw data, all of those things get linked. And as soon as you make one change, everything is going to stay constantly updated. We don't need to make any changes to the math when we change the data. This is just always going to do what it says. This is equal to B2. So if B2 changes, it's also going to change like that. That's kind of the simplest thing, just doing it like that. I'll point out that we can use the autofill handle if we want. So if I want to drag it down like this, we can see I've basically made a copy of this because Excel basically said, okay, the top one is equal to B2. What's the next one most likely going to be equal to? Well, B3, it's going to go down the line like that. And we can see it keeps changing like that. So we can use autofill a lot when we use functions to kind of copy the function and apply it like that. So that's the easiest way to kind of use the equal sign. We can also just kind of do primitive math. We can do equals. Instead of putting in 20, we could put 10 plus 10. And that's going to come out to be 20. And as we change this, that's going to change. We can also set up kind of a primitive function and say, maybe we'll say, take this cell and just kind of like add 100 to it. Maybe we have the rent and we want to add some special fee to the end of it. So we can do that like that. So this cell is equal to H2 plus 100. And if we take a look, this cell is based on this cell, and this cell is actually based on this cell. So if I come back and change this, I have all of them change in sync like that. So that's the beauty of Excel references. And as we begin to build functions, you only have to kind of code it in once, and then it always stays updated, and you don't have to go back and change things, even if the data changes. And then finally, we could do a manual, if we want to get the total columns of each month, we could do something manual, like say, take this, add a plus sign, click on this one, plus sign, click on this one, plus sign, this one. We could do this, and that'll give us the total like that. And that's kind of the manual way to do it. But we only want to do that if we have, only 2 to 3 things. If we had a sales column of data that's 1,000 points long, obviously we want to do B1 plus B2 plus B3 ... plus B1000. So that's when we get to the built-in functions. So this is kind of all manual stuff that we can build, but we can just use functions now to kind of do a whole lot with a lot less clicks. So now let's go ahead. I'm going to add a total column, so I get the total rent, the total spendings of each month. And I'm also going to add something like an average. So I can see, across the months, how much do I spend on average on food? What's my average utility bill? So we can have a couple examples of, actual functions using Excel's functions and not doing it manually. So with these guys, I'm going to quickly add some styling to these. And I'll use the control button to kind of select both of them. And maybe I'll want to match the green, but I might want them like light gray and maybe italic. And I'll swing them like this. Then I can highlight, click Control, highlight again, and just fill in the box. You know, you could do all this multiple ways now that we've seen, but that's just the way I'll do it now. And now let's use some actual Excel functions. So we'll begin with this one. Just like we said, anytime we do a function, a cell reference, we always begin with an equal sign. So if we see an equal sign, we know that something is being calculated or something is dependent on something. And now instead of doing like this plus this plus this, what we need to do to use an Excel function is just type in the name of the function. So in this case, I want to total it. So that's just called the sum function. And so you'll get used to the names of the basic functions. Like if you go up to the top, delete that. So you go up to the top, you can see things get named sensibly: sum, average, min, max. But a lot of things you might need to look up both what to call them and what they mean. So we can see when we use this tool, we can see we have an Excel function accessible to us called find, and it says exactly what that does. And we have something called left and exactly what that does. But that's all the kind of complicated stuff that we won't get into today. So we'll do equals sum. And then when we want to choose that function, what we do is open a parentheses like that. And now, so what we've done is we've done an equal sign, we've used the function name, and then inside these open close parentheses, we want to put the kind of data that that function is going to use. So in this case, instead of doing B2 plus B3, I just kind of want to make that selection. I don't need to do the plus sign. So I can just click and hold and select all that I want. And we can see this is kind of what it looks like. B2 colon B5 means B2 all the way to B5. So B2, B3, all the way to B5. So that's what that colon will mean. And then I just close the parentheses, and that's going to kind of finalize my function. And then I can just use that. And now I've used an Excel function successfully. And we can just check it again. Anytime I change my data, it's also going to change. And we can see what happens if I have something too big to fit into the cell. You might get these like hashtags. That just means you can't see it because it's too big. But if I change it, this updates as well. Just undo all of that. Oops. Okay, yeah, so that's how we can set up the sum function. We can do it one last time just as a demo. So equals sum like that. It doesn't have to be capitalized. It can be if you want. Open the parentheses to then choose which data is going to go into it. So I can just select by clicking and dragging this column, close my parentheses, and then do it like that. But like we said a little bit ago, you can autofill functions as well. So instead of setting up each sum function, all the way down if I have 12 months, I can just set up one, and then I can use the autofill handle and pull it this way. And we can see what happens is it kind of intuitively knows what I want to do. If I pull the function to the left, it's going to say, okay, you used the B row, so B2 to B5. Now it's going to use the C row, so C2 to C5. So it knows based on how you autofill the function, to the left, to the right, which row that you want to use relative to the one that it was. So we jump up to C2 to C5, we jump up to D2 to D5 like that. So that's how we can use the autofill. In this one, it's the same thing, but because we have no data in, it's just blank at the moment. If I put something in, it's going to do it, but just, this is the accounting type data. So it just does the little dash to mean no data present yet. Any questions about that? We'll do a second example of a function, the average function. But if you have any questions about the sum function, how to set it up, how to make selections, let me know. But what we can do now, this one, we'll do the equal sign, obviously a different name, but luckily it's just its own name, the common sense name. So equals average, and we can see Excel kind of defines what it does, gives back the mean of all the input data. We can see we also have a couple like advanced average functions. but we just want to use this plain one. So we'll do that. Open the parentheses. This little drop-down box, it's telling us what goes inside of it. So we just want to add a bunch of numbers to it. So just like sum, I'm going to click and drag. It's okay that I click this blank one, and then I'm going to close it. And we can see it's going to give me my average. If I change this back to 2000, we can see that makes sense. The average of all these 2000s is 2000s. And then again, same thing, let's save a bunch of time. Let's not do things multiple times. So we can just use the autofill handle bottom right and just pull it down like this. And now we can see we've done a bunch of calculations. We know the total of each month. We know the average across the months of like rent and utilities and things like that. And as we add in data, all of these things will update. So we'll get a new average and we'll get a new total. So if I do 150, we can see this updates, we'll keep going. Oops. And we'll just do this one. Maybe I had a surprise bill this week. We can see that updates as well. And again, we can see when we click on these, some of these might have hidden decimal points. It doesn't look like it. But yeah, this one has a hidden decimal point. So this is actually 163.75, but I'm just hiding it. Oops. And then it kind of rounds up visually, but the actual value is still 163.8.75 actually. Okay.
Matt, excuse me. Like you just few seconds ago you said like what is that property like in a source cell? If I change the value, then in the destination cell also it will change. What is that property called and how did you do it?
Yeah, so like this one, like I'm using B2 to fill this cell. Like what's it called when I reference it?
Okay.
So it's just called a cell reference. So anytime I use some cell's value to calculate the value in this new cell, I'm just referencing a different cell. That's all it's called. It's called a cell reference.
So if you change the value in B2, it will change the value in H2, right?
Yeah, exactly. So because this is dependent on B2, if I come to B2 and change it to 10, we can see this changed, and also this one changed because this one is also dependent on B2.
Right,
right. So anything that depends on something that changes is always going to automatically update. So you don't have to keep track of going back to make changes.
The cell reference, it is like equal to that cell position,
yep.
cell name. Okay.
Yeah, so the most basic use of the equal sign is just to say something is equal to something. So I can just use it like that. But we also use equal signs when it comes to functions because it's kind of the same thing. It's using different cells to calculate this cell, just a little, advanced.
Sorry, I missed it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can just say this is equal to something else. This is equal to, static value plus static value. We can mix them H2 plus 100 to get this one. And then we can do, any bit of math that we want, add up a bunch of stuff, minus a bunch of stuff as we need to.
Okay.
But once we, know this, unless we do really simple stuff, we'll kind of want to get to know these kind of built-in functions and how to use them. Okay, what do we want to do next? Okay, we'll just do one last example, and this will be a good illustration of how to watch out with functions. So in this one, I'm going to add like one new kind of stats column, one new calculation column. So in this column, I want to get like the average percent of total. So like on average, how much of my rent out of my total do I spend? I'm going to just set this up. Do that. Add in my lines. Okay. So in this case, what I want to do is basically, and let me extend this. So this box is my average total. So I spend on average 2,209 a month on all my spendings. And what I want to do is, on average, how much do I spend on rent, 50% or something, how much on utilities, how much on groceries. So I'm going to use these data points relative to this one. And we know how to do this. We won't use a function with this one, we'll actually do it by hand. So we know we can do this F2 divided by the total. And it gives us 0.68. And then all we have to do is we can just change the type to percentage up at the top. So I'm going to say on average, my rent is almost 70% of all my spendings. And if I do this one, I can say this one divided by total. That one is about 7% of my spendings on utilities. But if we take a look, if I try to autofill this little homemade function that I just made, so I'm going to click on the fill handle and pull it down. We can see something strange happen. This just means we have a bug. Excel doesn't like what we did. It can't calculate it. And let's take a look at what's happening and why it happened and how we can fix that as the last thing. So if we take a look at this, if we click on the box, we always see highlighted the cells that we use. So this one makes sense. We use this one and we use this one to divide into it. Makes sense. Then we autofill down. So let's take a look at what this is using. So this is what's happening. It's good that we moved down this box because we want to use this box in each one. But what we want is we want the total to be constant. We don't want to move down this way because we always want to use this 2209 box. So we need to kind of what's called use relative and absolute cell references. So these two are both relative cell references. So if I autofill them, it'll be allowed to change as I pull it down. So as I pull this down, we can see both of them drop by 1 because Excel thinks that's what we wanted. As we pull it down, it thinks we have new data to calculate. But what we actually want to do is have this one move down, but always use this one. So to do that, we want to kind of fix this in place so that this one is allowed to move down as we move the function down, but this one stays the same. And to do that, we just kind of modify the cell name that we have. And all we do is just use the little $ money symbol to kind of fix it. And that basically tells Excel, if I autofill this function, keep F6. Don't jump to F7, don't jump to F8, always use F6. So now when I try it, I use F2 and F6. I mistakenly used F3 and F7, but I want it to be F3 and F6. So let's see what happens when I move it down now that I fixed it in place. So if I pull it down, now we can see as I jump to each one, my F6 always stays the same because this is always being used in my calculation, but I'm still being allowed to move down this value in that half of the equation. So if I look, I keep moving the blue box down, blue box moves down, but my kind of red box stays the same. So that's called fixing values in place. We just use the money symbol to say, always use this, don't autofill and change it like that. And it just depends on what type of calculation you need. But you just have to ask, am I using a constant value? If so, I need to fix it so it won't change. But if I'm using a relative value, I'm always going to change this blue value as I move down the line. That one's allowed to be relative, so I just use kind of like the cell name by itself instead of fixing it with these symbols. So that's a bit of a complicated idea, but it's a key one to know when you get to using functions. Okay. Lastly, I want to show, I'll quickly show how to make a graph now that we have some nice data. We have some nice calculations and analysis. What happens if we want to make a nice visualization of this data? Well, we can come up to the home ribbon, and we'll come to, which one is it? We'll come to the second one, insert a graph. You can see we have a whole bunch of options. So you kind of have to know which one you want to use. And actually, when we choose it, we just want to graph the data, not like the total column. So I'm going to change my selection to just be this and not like the whole thing. And I'll include in my selection the kind of headings of my table. If I want to do a column graph, I can just click this button. We have a couple different options, but we'll just choose this one. And then what Excel does is it populates my sheet with a kind of like a floating graph. We can move this around. It's kind of like an image on the top of the sheet. And we can see it automatically goes month by month. So it took my data, plotted it month by month, and we could see I have all my options on the side as the multiple columns. I can kind of resize this. We'll notice that when I select this graph, I get this new option pop up on the ribbon. So if I click on that, it'll take a minute to load, it looks like. Oh no, it did load, okay. Pull that open. So we can change things if we want, like we can switch the row and column, kind of like that transpose. If I want to plot the rent, the utilities by itself and go month by month in the columns, we can do that. We can, if we want, change like this from blue to something else if we want. I won't get too much into it, but you can use these options on the side. Click on this button, and then we can kind of choose, all the visuals of this graph. So we can change the axis labels, how wide the graph is, the kind of scale of it, all these options we have available to us. But we won't focus on that just yet. And then one thing I'll point out is just like my all my functions change when I update a value. Look at what happens if I update a value. We can see my graph also automatically changes as well. So if I want, I can do something like, let me Control X to cut that. I'll come to sheet 2, and maybe I can have on sheet 2 like a whole bunch of graphs if I have a lot of data of all the visuals. And then I can come to just my data tables, maybe change some of the data. I have a whole bunch of data, it's difficult to see what's going on, but then I can just come back to this table. It's kind of preset. I don't need to make a new one each time I edit my data. And I can just have a nice display sheet of all my data visually like that. Okay, so that's the end of the class. We did all of the simple stuff. We know how to put in data now. We know how to do a lot of styling and a lot of convenience tools to save us time when we need to do a lot of data input, a lot of styling, maybe going back and changing the table, putting in data, changing its type so it makes sense, make it money type, and then the basics of functions. In Excel 2, we'll jump a couple steps up in difficulty. I'll give us some data, and we'll do a whole bunch of the advanced functions. So that's what we'll do in Excel 2. But anyone, if you have any questions now, if you want to see something again, if you want to ask, any question about Excel, I'm free to stick around now and do Q&A. And by the way, it is being videotaped, so I'll send you all the link to the class video when it's up.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing your knowledge.
Yep, happy to help.
Once again, back to your class and enjoying it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Yeah, good, yeah. Is it
Very
coming back to you?
We'll meet next Wednesday again, right?
Yes, same time, same place on Zoom, I believe.
2:30. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.